Thanks, Jim.
All right.
Now, I did have, I had a question that someone had left in the messages. I can't find it now. Hang on a minute. Chat. There we are. No, it's gone, unfortunately, because I left I left and then came back, so I've lost that direct message. But what I can do is give you a précis of what it said, which essentially was that a family member was going through a difficult time, and the meditator finds himself thinking about how to help the family member during meditation. And the question was, did I find myself doing something similar with students and thinking about students' issues when I'm meditating? And okay, how to let you all down gently. No. If I catch myself doing that, I stop. One of the reasons, incidentally, this is going to be the last Monday event until August. I was contemplating doing another one in a couple of weeks, but the reason I decided not to was because the amount of thinking about teaching and students and the Dhamma that was going on in my meditation, and I realized I'm overdoing it. We don't want to go down that path. So yeah, I said that's that. We're done because I need a rest. I need to mentally stop thinking about all this sort of stuff. But when it comes to meditation, that's not, and this is where the discipline comes in. That's not what I'd sat down to do. Therefore, I'm not going to do it. There's plenty. I mean, when it boils down to it, as a meditation teacher with a student and trying to help them to meditate, in a conversation with somebody, in a one-on-one conversation to somebody, you're able to gauge where they're at. You're able to resonate with them on some weird esoteric psychic level, and you talk it through, and maybe, just maybe, something you say might help. But I can't claim to know what are the things that are said that help, because it might just as well be something that the student says that helps them. But certainly the conversation is taking people in the right kind of direction. I think it's a lot more, it's a lot less sort of scientific and pinpoint than you think. It's like it's a kind of general sense of where somebody's at, and you do your best to sort of just encourage the right kinds of attitudes, the right kinds of way to deal with thoughts. So, if somebody is depressed, it's because they're clinging to negative states. It's not because the world's wrong. It's because they're clinging to negative states. And so you try to help them. You explain what painful mental feelings are and what clinging attachment is and so forth. But above and beyond that, it's like, whose responsibility is it? The Buddha did not enlighten anyone. Students enlighten themselves. The Buddha provides the tools, provides the context, provides the overarching philosophy and the methodology, and then invites people who are interested to undertake the practices and find out for themselves what's true. Okay? So what the teacher's doing is not enlightening the student. And it's like, maybe there's something I say today that you might ring bells. Like before the meditation, I was talking about, what was I talking about? Meta contentment. I mean, God, that's the first time I've ever mentioned that. So, so you never know what it is that somebody might just pick up on. How many times is it that a student has said, you've read the same stuff, and then you just happen to read the same stuff one more time, and suddenly something just resonates in a way that it hadn't before, because you've changed, because you've meditated. And so really, so to get back to the the question is, like, for me as a meditation teacher, no, I sat down to concentrate my mind, not to think about a student or students and their issues. And if you're sitting down to practice insight meditation, then thinking about a family member who's going through a rough time needs to be noted, needs to be observed as being a conditioned arising, a transient phenomenon, ungraspable. Allow it to arise and pass away. So really, the discipline is being able to detach oneself from the world in order to be able to see that you're actually running worry. It's the hindrance of worry. Hilda, you got your hand up.
Yes, and my question actually is related to what you were just describing. So it's about how specific we are when we're noting or being aware of a hindrance. To say, I sit there and I'm like, okay, worry. Then recently I realized I might say, okay, that's fear. But then I get really specific, and oh, okay, so it's this particular thing this specific thing that gives me fear, like fitting in or whatever it might be, and then it turns into almost like a psychoanalysis session.
Yeah, it's gone.
But then that can also be quite useful because it gives me some kind of insight into why I act like I do, or some, and I know we're not here to become like better people, but it can still be helpful, like really looking at what it is that I'm, I worry about, or should I just go back to, oh, it's worry, it's fear, and then let it go?
Well, but my teacher Alan once joked in a lecture that you find yourself planning, repainting, I don't know, your bathroom or whatever, and you end that sensuous planning knowing what color your bathroom is going to be, and it's like, well, that was quite valuable. That was, it wasn't what I sat down to do, but it was valuable. And so we don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. I'm not saying that if you have a valuable thought, it's not a valuable thought. I'm just suggesting that one should get back in touch with your intention. And the way I think about noting is a lot like a sculptor thinks about a big block of rock. You take out big, hefty chunks first, and you content yourself with just taking out big, hefty chunks. And then later on, you get to the fine detail. And I think there is a natural progression with insight. So you start with the big, blocky things. So it might very well be that the best somebody can do is just acknowledge that there was indeed thinking, and that there's a painful feeling, and that they feel bad. But that's a really, really good start. And then gradually, as time goes on, you're able to just discern worry. You're able to discern, say, planning to avoid catastrophe as opposed to planning for something nice to happen. And so levels of subtlety emerge as you become more and more aware of what's actually really going on. You become your own wise master in that respect. And there's a point that comes along when I was talking to one of the meditators who's on retreat at the moment, for whom noting of aggregates has turned into observation of the three marks, that what aggregate it is less important and impinges less, and what really impinges is the universal characteristics of transience, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. But that person will have started with those big blocky things, you know, just that's a thing. They just note it. Something happened. I think that is the broadest label you can apply. I think something happened. Whatever. Just and I think the key for everyone is just to relax and note at your level and be content to note something as you note it. And gradually over time, your levels of discernment and being able to tease out details will grow and grow. Does that help, Hilda? Is that kind of where you're at?
No, it does, for sure. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Annie, hello. Yeah, yes, you got to unmute there.
Two points. Just I couldn't catch the word. You said detach from the. I don't think it was world, was it? You've got to.
It was.
Oh,
yeah,
it was. Okay. So
because if the meditator is caught up with a family member in their heads, they just need that little bit of detachment, just to a little bit of room, just be able to say, "Oh, this is worry." Yeah, to differentiate.
That was point one, but point two. I mean, I couldn't help but be compelled to just flag up this thing of chemical imbalance as someone who's suffered or experienced a large portion of my life in a state of depression. I mean, obviously one is focusing on negativity. How important you think, are you just kind of disregarding really the idea of chemical imbalance?
I suffered from a lot of depression, moving out of adolescence for many, many different reasons. It was a dark cloud that came with me through life. Applying myself to the Noble Eightfold Path in its breadth and depth without recourse to any kind of help, medically or chemically, I resolved all those issues. So in terms of my experience, which is all I've really got to go on here, and the experience of I know of other meditators, is if one is wholehearted in one's approach to following the Noble Eightfold Path, chemical imbalances balance out. So our emphasis is, now I'm not saying for one moment that someone should just like drop any medication that they're on or anything like that. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that, like, if you reach a point of relative balance and that there is knowledge and comprehension of what it is that one does unskillfully and skillfully on the mental level, that through mindfulness, qualities like depression can be overcome completely.
Very reassuring. Thank you.
Okay. I thought there was somebody. Mandy, did you had your hand up, or you were okay?
I'm okay now, Paul. Got
Okay.
my answers.
Has anyone got any other questions? Is everyone happy and satisfied with my original answer? To say yeah, Mandy, go on.
Yeah, can I then still want to respond? You differentiate, I guess, between the insight and the meta meditation. Then, if somebody is, in need, we can then do meta with meditation, compassion meditation with that person.
I'm not quite following. In terms of what I was talking with.
Well,
Annie,
not in terms of help, of course, but in terms of if you want to bring your mind to that person, if you want.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, this perhaps is something that I need to bring out a little bit more. It's a very good observation, Mandy. Thank you. It's like once you have established what something is, and you've accepted that it's there, and that by looking at it, you're no longer feeding it. So a negative trait like worry about a family member, for instance, that's unskillful. Okay, so clinging attachment to that will make you ever more unhappy in the moment. But if there is the mindful acknowledgement of it, and you look at it and you see it for what it is, that's skillful. And then you can double the skill by then turning the mind to something profitable, like loving kindness for that person, or compassion for that person. Or even if it's just worrying about whether the sky is going to fall in today, you can spend time just appreciating everything that you like about what's unfolding. The important thing is that you haven't hidden from the negative, you've acknowledged it, you've therefore disarmed it, and then you can replace it with something extremely positive that changes the mind state. And I would call that skillful. Yeah. So you don't deny the negative, you acknowledge it, and then you develop the positive. Ellen, was that right, Mandy? Sorry, was that?
Yeah, yes, but only the last thing you said also triggered a question in me, but I'm not sure if Ellen then is.
No, go ahead.
Oh, Ellen is yes, chomping at the bit.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Go on, Mandy.
Okay, well, I notice also that my tendency then to when something negative comes up, it's quite. I'm very quickly done with it. So it's noticing, it's recognizing, and then back to the breath. And it goes so quickly that I sometimes wonder, it's just not a coping mechanism to just easily want to fly away from, want to move away from the negative, from the unpleasantness.
Completely understandable. But if see one of the issues, one of the many issues with meditation is overcompensation. The belief that, because we have a belief about what we think meditation ought to be. So we think it ought to be calm and it ought to be pleasant. And so when we discover the restless and the unpleasant, we want to note it in order to get the hell out as soon as we can. And so we overcompensate and we try to get back to the breath. And that is actually another form of ignoring.
Yeah.
And if you're willing to take the chance to be courageous and instead of running back to the breath, you are willing to stay with whatever the issue is, whatever, whether it's restlessness, worry, or whatever. And really what we're talking about is the unpleasant feelings. If you're willing to stay with the unpleasantness of the situation, you will see that it is transient.
Mm-hmm.
You will gain the experience of seeing it just dissolve. And that is transformational at a meta level. It's not just transformational in terms of just that incident. It's teaching you about the nature of unpleasant feelings. And as a consequence of that, each time, subsequent to that, I should say, another painful experience arises, it's that much easier to deal with it. You go, oh, it's only a pain. You reach a point where you go, oh, this is okay. So this is unpleasant feeling. This is a painful resultant. Okay. And you sit with it and you see that it dissolves under your watchful gaze. So if you're willing just to spend that little more time, rather than rushing back to the breath, of just being with the experience and let the experience impinge and tell you what it is in reality. Yeah. So slowing down, really.
Slowing down, yes, exactly. Thank you. Cool. Yeah, definitely.
Talking of patience, Ellen.
Oh,
hello.
That comment reminds me of it stuck with me when you introduced the notion of label and linger.
Ooh,
that worked for me. So I know she was just referring to. I'd like to just ask, you mentioned discipline And I just had that reminder of how life and meditation in the chair, they always are going to mirror each other. And I've really been bothered about how undisciplined my meditations have been. You've, of course, just reminded me it's the same as in my daily life. So I guess if I was going to just ask a question, any tips or hints or, oh, sorry, there's my dog, about how to ramp up discipline other than intention? Any other? It's just my life at the moment is like very chaotic. And
compared to what?
Compared to what?
This is my problem. This is the problem of having a general conversation. Because to one person, I would say, really, if you want to get the most out of meditation, you really need to be disciplined. To another person, that's the last thing you need to hear. And I'm sort of thinking, because it depends on what you consider chaos to be. You know, chaos to a NASA scientist sending rockets up into space is a very different thing from chaos according to Keith Richards. I just don't know where that came from. I think you know, Keith Richards' definition of chaos is going to be very different from yours, Ellen.
Mm-hmm. True.
And so that's the problem. It's like it depends. It depends what you mean by chaos. So like, because you want a healthy level of chaos in the meditation. I know it sounds paradoxical, but you do. You want things to come and go as they please.
Yeah.
You just want to be able to just rest with, contentedly allowing from a place of receptivity, being receptive to what comes up so you can learn from it, so you can just explore and discover, rather than trying to enforce your will upon something to get things into order. So but a discipline might be, it's like, okay, so I have a tendency not to sit to meditate. So discipline would say, okay, well, I need to develop a healthy way of intending to sit. For instance, I recommend people, if they're meditating in the evening, then during the day, they say things to themselves like, I'm really looking forward to sitting this evening. I'm really looking forward to it, to get the old spiritual salivation going, if I can put it like that. Looking forward to sitting. I'm going to be sitting at 7 this evening. I'm really looking forward to this. You know, it's like generating very positive intentions towards it. If you're going to be meditating in the morning, it's thinking about it before you go to sleep at night and say, I'm really going to look forward to it. Now, this is discipline. That is disciplining the mind, but it's the way you put it, you choose to put it, makes all the difference. You know, so I'm really looking forward to getting up in the morning. You know, when we got a retreat on, now, if I had my way in life, life would be a perpetual lie-in until I died. But unfortunately, we got a retreat on, so I have to get up at 5:45. So whenever I go to sleep, before I go to sleep on a retreat, I always say to myself, I'm really looking forward to getting up, doing my exercises. I'm really looking forward to being in that meditation at 6:30. I just totally am. Even though I know deep down what I would like to do is live in a perpetual state of lying in, I can't. So deep down, I know I'd rather be lying in, but I tell the mind tells itself, we're really looking forward to this. And the mind is a bit like a stupid puppy. It goes, oh, that's what we're doing. Okay, all right, I'm down with that. It will believe it. It will.
Right.
That's discipline, but it doesn't feel like discipline.
No, it doesn't. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Hi, Sarah. Thanks, Ellen. Was that everything?
Yeah.
Okay. Sarah, hello.
Hi, thank you. I was just thinking about the original question. It reminded me of both there was a meditator talking about their daughter recently who was very ill. And also I met a mother whose daughter has got severe mental problems. She's about 15 years old, and they have both of these parents have a real responsibility to do something. And obviously, if it comes up in the meditation, that's not the time to think about it. I just wondered what your thoughts would be as somebody, or like a psychological professional who has a responsibility to help someone who's very distressed. Do you have any thoughts about how to deal with that? Like, first of all, in the meditation, say there's worry, and I'll think about that later. But how to structure thinking about how to help a child or a patient of yours who's very ill and needs help.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure what you mean there, because like, I'm not a professional health worker, mental health worker. I don't have those skills. I'm a meditation teacher.
Yeah, I think what's a skillful way of not just writing it off, that there are times when one has to deal with things.
But I haven't said write anything off.
No, but
I said essentially linger with the whatever you discover. If it's unskillful, you know it's unskillful, and you're able to watch it dissolve, and then you can replace it with something skillful. So you're not in denial. You're not rejecting it. You know, it's like, what else to say here? These days, what I do, I mean, there's another aspect to this, which is that the more samatha, the more calming meditation you do, the more you realize that you exist in a sea of mind, and that that sea of mind includes everybody's minds. And in reality, there is no separation, which means you can come across, you know, lovely, friendly octopus, but equally you can come across, you know, a very, very unhappy shark. And you have to learn how to navigate those waters, those psychological waters. And the reality is we do pick up on one another all the time. And not everyone is in a good place. And not everyone, despite the fact that they're not in a good place, they don't actually recognize that all these mental states bleed into one another, and that there can easily be cross-contamination. And so I've had to develop over the years a knowledge of how to deal with other people's negativity. And the way I do it is to claim it. So if someone's throwing, either consciously or unconsciously throwing negativity at me, I use it, I take it, I claim it, I take it in, I use it as fuel for my inner fire, I incinerate it, it becomes my power. And I found that's the absolutely best way to deal with other people's negativity. Because they can't do anything about that. And of course, once you've got that inner fire burning, you can use it for loving kindness, you can use it for compassion, you can use it for concentration. It's all sorts of things you can use it for. But it takes time and practice. But the key is you don't reject the experience. Because otherwise what you're forced to do is constantly you're pushing back. You're trying to create this boundary constantly. And that is hard work. I've tried it. That is such hard work. eventually, even if you create this really incredibly complex sphere all around you, which has mirrored so I had this sphere that I created in my mind, which was like a mirror ball. So like the outside of the sphere was just perfectly reflective. So whatever you threw at me would be reflected back. But you know, in the end, it all sort of like you've held it up as best you can, and it stops, and the negativity gets through again. So what I just decided to do more recently was, to claim it. Yeah, this is my power now. Yeah. So I throw it in the furnace. I throw it in the furnace, in the incinerator, and it becomes fuel for my power. I become stronger as a consequence. So if it is somebody who is deliberately, and it's, I have to tell you that that's a real thing, that people can be deliberately horrible to you on the mental level.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry, but that's now mine.
So you're just literally noting in the moment as you would in a meditation, but if it's everyday life, you just do it internally. I mean, that's what I practice.
Sometimes 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
I'll wake up and I'm being attacked.
Ooh. Right.
And now I just claim it.
Wow.
Oh, thank you very much. Now I'm stronger.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. So I can't remember who was first. You got a few hands have come up. Well, Rakesh, you haven't said anything. So Rakesh, how you doing? There you are.
Good. Thank you, Paul. There's just a few things. I think I just wanted your permission to just spend a minute just reading this really interesting sutta that I found that I actually shared with a friend a couple of years ago when he was going through some difficult times, and it just seems to resonate and touch on a lot of what you've been saying today, and actually some things that you've been saying in your most recent calls. You know, where you've spoken about how it's absolutely fine to kind of just your mind's almost sort of idiotic, and if you tell it to be happy, it will be happy if you prepare it in certain ways. And I'm just going to read this. It's called the Punya Sutta, and it's just going to take just 30 seconds, I think, to read this particular part of it. So there's a monk called Punya, and he says to the Buddha, "Lord, there is a country called Sunaparanta. I'm going to live there." And the Buddha replies, Punya, the Sunaparanta people are fierce, they are rough. If they insult and ridicule you, what will you think? If they insult and ridicule me, I will think these Sunaparanta people are civilized, very civilized, in that they don't hit me with their hands. That is what I will think, O Blessed One. That is what I will think, O One well gone. But if they hit you with their hands, what will you think? I will think these Sunaparanta people are civilized, very civilized, in that they don't hit me with a clod. But if they hit you with a clod, I will think these Sunaparanta people are civilized, very civilized, in that they don't hit me with a stick. But if they hit you with a stick, I will think these Sunaparanta people are civilized, very civilized, in that they don't hit me with a knife. But if they hit you with a knife, I will think these Sunaparanta people are civilized, very civilized, in that they don't take my life with a sharp knife. But if they take your life with a sharp knife, if they take my life with a sharp knife, I will think there are disciples of the Blessed One who, horrified, humiliated, and disgusted by the body and by life, have sought for an assassin, but here I have met my assassin without searching for him. That is what I will think, O Blessed One. That is what I will think. Good, Punya, very good. Possessing such calm and self-control, you are fit to dwell among the Sunaparantans. Now it is time to do as you see fit.
Yeah, Rakesh, thank you so much for that. Yeah, I do remember that sutta. Long time since I've read it, but yeah, it's absolutely the point, isn't it? So in a sense, he's claiming the power through. It reminds me of of you know, the Buddha's parable of the saw as well. Whosoever sets his heart at enmity is no doer of my teaching. It's very much that quality of taking ownership in the right way. So yeah, absolutely, yeah. So if someone's having a go at you or whatever, it's being grateful that they're not actually leaping at you with a knife and retaining your composure.
Yeah.
And the more, it goes back to that thing of the more you're willing to experience painful feelings, and the more familiar you become with the transient nature of painful feelings. I mean, I had an incident a few years ago that really, really hurt me. Really, really did hurt. But it taught me so much, and it inoculated me against that kind of narcissistic attack, because I understand what it feels like, because I had to experience it. And it knocked me for six, it really did. But I stayed awake, stayed alert, and over time I was able to completely comprehend that kind of sort of poisonous injection and what it does to you. And as a consequence, now I'm inoculated. I'm totally inoculated against it. So it is how you choose to respond, essentially. Thanks, Rakesh.
Thank you.
Sally K. You want to say hello?
Hello. So it's interesting you talking about negativity from other people. My daughter actually asked me to ask you a question on her behalf about dealing with negativity from her friends. But listening to everybody else and listening to you, it sort of made me think, do you think in what we're trying to do, we're trying to understand people's behaviour, and in understanding their actions and their behaviour, it's actually turning it into compassion, and that's where the power lies, because we see with compassion? Is that what you're trying to say when you're saying you take it in and create your own power with it? Is that because you can see what's going on, you can understand it, you know where it's coming from, so then you can actually be empathetic and show compassion?
Yeah, so because the tendency is, when we experience the painfulness of life, when it is directed towards us, we want to bat it away, we want to defend ourselves, we want to create a shield against it, we want to stop the pain. And so we are at a disadvantage, because we are the victim in that situation. We perceive ourselves as the victim, and so we are lessened by that. But if through experience, and I appreciate children, it's they're still developing, but certainly as adults, through the practice of mindfulness, through the practice of coming to understand feelings and responses, your relationship to those painful feelings can change dramatically, where you are no longer the victim.
Yeah.
And if we understand the Buddha's teaching correctly in terms of action and result, it's like, another way of looking at this is, well, okay, I mean, this is something I've employed before, which is, this is a resultant, it's painful, so I must have done something in the past, I don't know, but I must have done something in the past to warrant this. So I'm really, really grateful it's arisen in this form, rather than what it could have been with a different set of conditions. And so the way you ameliorate the chances of painful resultants arising in all their fullness is the way you choose to live your life now. So if you choose to live your life full of loving kindness, full of compassion, full of appreciation of the wonders of life, then you are far less likely to encounter painful resultants, because the conditions aren't there. And the degree to which those painful resultants impinge upon you is dependent on those conditions too. So you can't stop the painful side of life, but you can comprehend it to such a degree that you can transform it. And if you can transform somebody else's aggression into your own energy, and not only retain your compassion, but express compassion, then you are fulfilling the Buddha's teaching.
Yeah. Because I suppose seeing yourself as a victim in the situation when negativity is coming towards you is, well, you've just fallen into the trap of the self, haven't you? I am the victim. Well, actually, if I'm not the victim, it's just something that's happening. It could be anybody. This could be happening to anybody. I suppose that lessens the...
Well, or you can say, if I'm the victim of anything, it's my own past actions.
Yeah, yeah.
And
yeah.
and what
That's
are we
good
reaching? We're reaching a point of acceptance. And acceptance does not imply passivity. It implies, firstly, taking responsibility. And that then leads to the ability to transform. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, when I say it becomes my power, I mean, it powers me. There is an energetic quality to somebody else's abusive behavior that you feel. It is literally transforming that into something extraordinarily healthy. It's the
So
same
you've
energy.
got like your own catalytic converter, your own spiritual
We all-
catalytic converter.
we all do. We all do.
Yes.
We've all got an inner fire. I'm not being very Buddhist in saying that, you know. But what I'm saying is like it's there in all of us. We all have it, and it's just learning to recognize it. And that you can literally burn anything in it. It's an incinerator.
Yeah, I like that. That's really helpful. Thank you. Cheers.
Hi, Hilda.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting what you were saying about like putting a shield up and trying to shield yourself from negativity. Because my question is maybe slightly random, but I was going to ask you about, you know, how in the texts we have people who have developed like psychic powers. And I've encountered someone who claims to be able to like sense energy in different ways. And I think this person mentioned at one point, like, you know, creating a kind of a shield. This is something they do to kind of shield themselves from negativity and various different things to do with energy and how you like clear energy, like bad energy from where you live, all this kind of stuff. So my question was just going to be like, how much should we as meditators pay attention to someone claiming that they have psychic powers? Because we know there are people like that. Like, is it like, are they saying stuff I'm not? Like, does it have any kind of merit?
It has merit. It has merit. But here's the thing: there are some things really. I mean, I'm tiptoeing across a border here where I shouldn't really necessarily be anywhere near. Which is, I think there are some things which are best left quiet, and that you know, what essentially is bragging about psychic powers is going the wrong way. I don't know if people are familiar with Devadatta, who was the Buddha's cousin, who ordained under the Buddha, and he turned out to be really good at concentration meditation and got all these psychic powers, and it went straight to his head, and he tried to take the order over from the Buddha and created a schism in the order, and it was just like it was literally playing with fire. And I think that one of the important aspects of the Buddha's training is we don't want to fall into woo-woo. We don't want to fall into spiritual woo-woo. We want to retain a pragmatism. And when we start talking about, you know, energies and powers and things, it's very much the samatha side of the practice.
Yeah.
It's a lot less scientific, shall we say, whereas the insight path is very scientific. This is about components of experience and understanding how life is put together moment by moment. It's not trying to establish a persona of somebody with, you know, these qualities. These qualities do develop. Anyone who learns to calm down starts to see aspects of life that hitherto they hadn't been aware of. And there are more things under the sun. And you can't help it. You start, your knowledge grows about, oh, I wonder if, is that what they mean by that? But you don't talk about it. There are some things which are just better left unsaid. Doesn't mean you can't work on that level, but it's not the sort of thing that you talk about publicly. You know?
And I mean, obviously there are people who do, though, you know, who build like a whole brand and, you know, sell books and that kind of thing. So I'm just thinking, like, if we come across these people, you know, it's the best to just
run away.
I don't know, keep a safe distance.
Keep a safe distance. Yeah.
Maybe they're seeing something about me or something in my situation that I'm missing, you know. But do you see what I mean?
Oh, I see what you mean. No, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's the way I look at it was, I'm so grateful to my teacher, Alan, who taught me Vipassana, insight wisdom, before concentration. Because had I gone down the samatha route, had I gone down the calming route, I don't think he would have got me back. Just knowing my nature. So, like, samatha meditation is like a cul-de-sac, but the deeper you go into it, the more it expands, and it expands and it expands and it expands and it expands till it's the size of the universe, but it's still a cul-de-sac. So eventually you have to find your way back out in order to carry along the insight route, in order to do away with suffering. So none of the samatha stuff, no matter what it is, no matter what powers, forces of people's you know, fingertips, no matter what they either think or have achieved in samatha practice, it's still worldly. It doesn't lead to transcendent wisdom. So for my money, the Vipassana route avoids the possibility of being, you know, being sort of taken in by all of that. I'm not saying those things don't exist. They do, and they can. And really, you only really want to play with them after you've finished the insight path, and you've got no more greed, hatred, and desire for fame, desire for, you know, wealth. Desire. If you want to play with all that stuff, you don't want to play with it whilst you still got the roots of greed and hatred, because you're playing with fire. You don't know the power behind it. It's astonishing. So I think that willingly renouncing the samatha path and saying, no, I'm going to focus on insight in order to realize the transcendent, I think you're, in many ways, unless you're with a really competent samatha teacher who will discipline you and teach you the rules of engagement, because that's what you need. If you don't want to go astray, you need the rules of engagement to keep you on the straight and narrow. So I personally, I was so grateful to Alan for teaching me the Vipassana path and not mixing it with samatha. So you're not, I mean, you're no more missing out the samatha path than you are, you know, deciding, well, I can't be happy until I've got a degree in, I don't know, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, cartology. I'll never be happy until I've thoroughly exhausted, you know, being a entrepreneur. I'll never truly be happy until I've totally seen everything to do with being a tennis player. You know, there are infinite, what I like to call the 101 lesser concerns, which includes the whole samatha side. My personal opinion, that those things are not worth anything compared to the realization of freedom from suffering. So that's my extended answer to your question. Does that help, Hilda? I don't think
Yeah,
I missed, because once the Vipassana path is all done with, you've got an infinite playground. You know,
Yeah.
you can play to your heart's content, developing whatever skills, whatever you want to do. You know. So.
Yeah, no, it's good
Okay.
to know, just to be a bit wary of people who claim to have certain powers. You know, it's a good reminder.
I think, yeah. I mean, people are wary of me and what I have to say. So, you know, it's like for me, like, what I would tell anyone is, you know, don't take my word for it. You know, that's not the purpose of this. Is there something what's said that is helpful, that when you sit down to meditate, it makes, you know, you've learned something about meditation, or, you know, you're inspired to practice, because ultimately you have to find out for yourself. Not even the Buddha could enlighten another. So, you know, so somebody in my capacity, what the role that life seems to have thrust upon me is that, you know, there's no blind belief required. There's no necessity to believe something just because so-and-so said it. And I'm not claiming anything of the sort. I'm just putting it out there. And if somebody wants to, they can take up on it. If they don't want to, then they don't have to, you know. So you don't have, you know, so everything, I think, you know, we can't be so open that our brain falls out. That's so open-minded that our brain falls out. So there has to be a certain amount of discernment with anyone talking about this stuff.
Thank you.
Cool. Mandy.
I think Annie was first.
Oh, right. Okay. Annie. You're right, Annie.
Right. How are you spelling samatha, Paul? I'm not aware of this.
Samatha.
Okay. And then the second question. Sorry?
Spelling bee.
And then the second question was, in the breakout room, there was mention of weekend retreats, and I don't know what form they take. I don't know if it's appropriate to talk about that now.
Well, yeah, weekend retreats are silent retreats. It starts on a Friday evening and run through till Sunday evening. And there are hour-long meditations throughout the course of the 2 and a bit days.
Okay.
And there's a chance to have a chat with the meditation teacher. Great. Thanks, Annie. Mandy.
Yes, thank you, Paul, about the samatha way of looking at the samatha. But I also have people saying, and I totally agree with your point of view, but they are saying that sometimes, like, you have the mushrooms kind of things, kind of drug that helps to get more insight or quicker insights in your meditation if you do use it, those powers, those kind of plant.
Sorry, did you say drugs?
Plant powers, they say, yes.
Oh, plant, like ayahuasca, that sort of thing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
What do you think about it? How can you?
It's a very good question. How deeply is to go into this?
I understand.
I think that.
Whereas, if I can add, sorry, Paul, if I can add something, that's what I get back from them is that they say it opens your mind more, and there's less hindrances and less. So you're quicker to you're quicker there or quicker to the point. I don't know exactly how they.
It's one of these self-delusions that people go in for. I think that, let's not use drugs as an example for this, but let's just use travel as an example. Travel broadens the mind. Travel shows you that there are different people in the world, but it turns out for all their differences in culture and so forth, they all share similar issues, how to survive in this world. And so when I went traveling, it broadened my mind, it opened my mind. It meant that perception was more malleable as a consequence. There was the recognition that, well, it all depends on how you look at a thing. You know, it's the kind of perception that arises is contingent upon conditions. And so therefore, you become less narrow-minded, less stuck in one way of seeing things. And that is so very, very helpful when it comes to undertaking the spiritual search. Because what is the Vipassana practice all about? Changing your perceptions. There's more than one way of looking at things. So we have the mundane way of looking at things, and we have the aggregates, the ultimates. It's a different way of looking at life. And so for somebody who has traveled, they are at an advantage when it comes to meditation than somebody who has lived a narrow life and has not questioned their own perceptions, right, if I can put it that way. Now, the problem with taking some kind of stimulant, firstly, you are always dependent upon the stimulant in order to gain that openness of mind. So it's not free. And how many times in the course of Vipassana and the whole journey do you have to see transience? How many times do you have to see unsatisfactoriness? How many times do you have to see non-self? You have to see it again and again. And the problem is with taking some kind of stimulant is you have the experience and there may be a kernel of truth in the experience. Subsequent to the experience, you're looking back at the experience and say, I've seen that, and treating that as a permanent state of awareness or wakefulness. And it's not. It was dependent upon an artificial stimulation. There was a kernel of truth, and that kernel of truth was transient. How many times do we have to see transience in the course of this training? Hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands of times. Are you going to take that many drugs? You just can't. And so it's holding people back. Then it's not giving them the depth of insight. It's like it's giving them like this momentary, hey! And then the door slams shut again, and that's what they're left with, just the memory of that. That's not what this is about. This isn't about collecting exotic experiences. This is about gaining insight into the true nature of conscious experience as it's unfolding again and again and again, to eradicate the wrong views and the wrong perceptions that create the conditions for suffering.
I guess
So,
it's slow and steady, you say.
Yes, slow and steady. Yeah. Well, it is the direct path, because actually these people, although they think they're forging ahead, they're just meandering. I think I've heard an analogy of like, it's like you jump in the boat at night and you start rowing like crazy, and then at dawn, and the light comes up, you realize that the boat's been tied to the quay the whole time. And really, people are fooling themselves, thinking that they are progressing at a quicker rate, but they're not going anywhere. Vipassana is, for my money, is the most direct route.
I guess also, if you say the quicker road, is also craving, isn't it? You're craving for something to achieve in the
People
moment.
want exotic experiences.
Yeah.
They want the other. They want otherness. I completely understand, but that's why somebody practices samatha meditation. And I see it so often, the disappointment on people's faces when they come for instruction, and I tell them, yeah, we're just going to be looking at normal experience. Oh, the disappointment. Oh. And yet the true wonder of existence is contained in this very moment. You don't have to have some kind of artificial stimulation. You just need to look clearly. Wow, this is all actually happening. But we're so close to it, we can't see the woods for the trees. And we're, the people's minds are, are thoroughly taken up with wrong perceptions. And as you clarify those perceptions through this steady observation of experience, those perceptions get cleaned out, and you start to see life as you have never seen it before. But you're still looking at the ordinary components of ordinary experience. It's just you are seeing that has always been extraordinary. Yeah, it's exactly the same becoming. It's like not being discontent with what is, seeking salvation through the other. That is the problem. When you finally realize with meditation that the place you want to be is the dead end, it's the dead end, it's the end of all that becoming, and realizing that there's no end to it, and you voluntarily let go of the becoming and instead just relax into the moment and pay attention to what's taking place in the moment. So you're no longer looking for the exotic, you're no longer looking for otherness, you are content to look at what is. Yeah, and it's the truth is here, now, always, and you're not being denied it, it's just you're ignoring it. And so if you're taking, in this case, artificial stimulation of whatever kind in order to seek the truth, you are just further obscuring it. So, man, I'm really glad that you asked that question, because I've been wanting to say that for an awfully long time. Publicly.
Wow, thank you very much. Very helpful.
So I'm really going to go down well with the hip crowd, aren't I? The hip spiritual crowd, all off to Peru.
Yeah.
I'm really going to be. Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway. Yeah. Right. Are we done? I think I'm done. On that bombshell. So I think we've covered it all this evening. Is there anything I've missed out? Thank you all for your contributions. That hour has just passed so quickly. So we'll have a break from the Monday evenings so I can get my energy back for it, so I don't burn out. And we'll recommence in August, if that's okay with everyone.
Thank you, Paul. That was great.
Thanks, Roland. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Paul.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks so much, Paul. Have a nice rest.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll do.
Thanks, Paul.
See you all again soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Paul.